Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 ways World War I changed the English language. Language is always evolving, changing as our civilization changes. As populations move, local dialects mix, vocabularies blend, die off or go viral and infect the mainstream. Before the internet brought everyone online, the biggest events to bring large numbers of different dialect styles together was war. 100 years ago, the First World War, July the 28th to November the 11th, 1918, was a truly global conflict, bringing together different nations, different classes of people, speaking different languages, and even different dialects of English. From this mixing pot and the horrors of war, mainstream English changed forever. Number 10. Serbia is served. European tensions were at an all-time high in the years leading up to World War I. The leading empires of the day looked to control what they had while searching for ways to expand at the expense of the others. Tiny in relation to the ancient empires of Turkey, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, Serbia was an upstart nation that had recently won its independence from the Turkish Ottoman Empire. In 1914, the fire that would ignite Europe sparked when the terrorist group the Black Hand assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. The assassination caused the Austro-Hungarian Empire to declare war on Serbia, which set in motion a series of alliances that, in 1914, saw most of Europe declaring war on each other. At the time, Serbia was so new that English media hadn't even settled on how to spell its name, with most calling it Servia. This annoyed the tiny nation no end, causing the Serbian legation in London to file an official protest and plead to change the standard spelling of Serbia to Serbia. The Serbs found Serbia highly offensive to our people, mainly because it suggests a false derivation, meaning to serve. It is a source of hidden pain to Serbians to see media persist in using the corrupt forms. Number 9. Ways to express medical problems. Thousands of men spent long hours, days, or weeks stuck in muddy, flooded trenches that were breeding grounds for disease and sickness. Outside of the trench was even worse, as men were ripped apart by bullets and shrapnel. This incredible amount of misery created a number of words that we still use to this day. Cooties, lousy, and crummy came from the nicknames soldiers gave the ever-present lice that infested their damp uniforms. Someone barely alive, either mentally or physically, was called a basket case, while to get in a flap refers to being worried or excited and spawned the term unflappable or marked by assurance and self-control. Number 8. Words borrowed from India. When the British Empire called up its vast imperial resources, it brought in the veteran and very professional Indian Army that had been fighting for decades for the British Empire. The British and Indian Army were very well integrated, and Indian words had been making their way into the British Army for years. But with World War I, the Indians mixed with other soldiers from many other countries. Many loanwords spread throughout the multinational Allied front, but probably the most famous is cushy, from the Urdu word kush, or pleasure. Soon everyone was using cushy to describe plum assignments, trenches that weren't under a foot of water, or the front lines that were rarely active. All of these were either kush or cushy. Another Indian word that entered the mainstream was blighty, from the Urdu word vilayati, meaning foreign or British. During the war, it evolved into a nickname for the motherland or Great Britain. Homesick soldiers would talk about what they would do when they made it home to Blighty. Number 7. Words borrowed from the French. While the British called up the resources of the empire, the war was fought on French soil, and so was fiercely defended by the brave men of the French army. As the Allied nations fought side by side with French units or went on leave in French towns, they picked up some French words and phrases like tout suite, from the French tout de suite, or to do something immediately. Words like skive, or someone who is lazy and avoids work, probably from esquiver, to escape or avoid, also entered the English language. Number 6. Words for Islam. At the start of the 20th century, the Islamic Ottoman Empire was waning and out of the minds of most of the Western world. Large populations of Muslims existed throughout the world, just like today, but they were minorities in the larger states. There was also no large-scale Muslim immigration to the New World or to Europe. As such, Islam was an exotic and abstract concept. This changed with World War I. Suddenly, the Islamic Ottoman Empire was allied with the Germans, while vast Muslim armies fought for both the British and French. Thrust into the news, Western media didn't know how to describe the Islamic people, variously calling them by various spellings of Muslim, like Moslem or Musulman. Other news outlets described them as the people of Muhammad, with terms like Mohammedans or Mahometans. This was greatly offensive to Muslims because it implied that they worshipped Muhammad instead of Allah. Number 5. English gets wasted. The soldiers fighting in Europe had a mix of boredom, money in the pocket, youth, and the ever-present possibility of a horrible future and a violent death at the front. Any soldier will tell you that this is the perfect recipe for blowing off a little or a lot of steam. Behind the front front lines, entertainment centers sprouted up, catering to the millions of soldiers that needed a little R&R. France even set up its own system of brothels to cater to the needs of Allied soldiers, the infamous military campaign brothels. Out of this party atmosphere, soldiers developed their own slang for their brethren who had had a little too much and were wasted out of their minds. Washout came to describe an aspiring officer who failed in their effort to get a commission. It quickly spread to represent any type of failure, including the more modern use of "that party was a washout." To drink too much or to binge was before the war a local term just used in Lancashire. In the army, the term quickly spread and has firmly embedded itself in our modern culture. Number 4. The evolving meaning of gay. Generations of children used to use the word gay with its supposed double meaning, either meaning homosexual or happy. Something, like, you're gay the happy way. Only for decades it hasn't just meant happy. Of course, 100 years ago, during World War I, it was a different time. At that time, gay did indeed mean happy, which of course created some interesting headlines when viewed through modern eyes. Take, for example, the December 24th, 1914 headline in the Seattle Star talking about Berlin during its first Christmas at war. While Berlin was merry in its first wartime Christmas, its ally, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was having a tougher time, as told by this Tacoma Times December 1st, 1914 headline, "Gay Vienna Goes Hungry." Back in America, this May 8th, 1915 New York Tribune told people officers gay in clubhouse. Away from the war was this May 19th, 1916 headline from the Chicago Tribune, "Boys have gay spending orgy on teachers $80. $80 in 1916 is $1,756.04 in 2007. Another eyebrow raiser is this from the Seattle Star from January 14th, 1915. "Gay old daddy ducks out with young son's wife." Number 3. Language of technology. The First World War caused many revolutions, but also revolutionized war itself. For the first time, nations were able to industrialize military death. New technologies sprung from more and more efficient ways to kill each other. Some of the everyday words that we use come from this conflict. Blimp comes from the military's intense desire to make military jargon through abbreviations or shortening words. In this case, British Class B airship plus limp, aka an airship without a frame became blimp. The French efforts to hide their movements from the ever-watchful Germans necessitated a new word. The French came up with camouflage from the Parisian slang to disguise, and the French camouflet, or puff of smoke. Extended trench warfare was a new concept that led to the stalemate of World War I. To break the enemy's lines, a new machine was needed. Its British champion and future Prime Minister Winston Churchill used the term landship or caterpillar machine gun destroyer, but in all government communication the word tank was used as in water tank. The nickname stuck, and we now refer to the concept of a tracked armored vehicle as a tank. While we talked about Allied borrowed words, some words came from the enemy. The German phrase "Gott strafe England," God punish England, was widely used in German propaganda. Allied propagandists quickly adopted the term, and it evolved to mean being attacked from a machine gun or airplane to strafe. Number 2. Shells of death. One of the greatest weapons of World War I was the artillery shell. It could vaporize whole squadrons of exposed men and cover areas with a deadly metal shrapnel shower. It could also be used as a tool to destroy fortifications, trenchworks, or even cut up the barbed wire entanglements. All sides used a variety of artillery shells for different purposes, and so soldiers quickly gave nicknames to each. All of these terms eventually entered mainstream English, which is why we still now use terms like pipsqueak, plonker, fizzbang, or whizzbang, words that originally described the sounds artillery shells made. On the flip side, shells that didn't explode were duds, which eventually entered English as a mainstream way to say failure. Number 1. Pilots. With a rickety plane on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers made history with the first powered, controlled, and sustained heavier-than-air flight. Just over 10 years later, World War I broke out, and from the start, aviation played a key part. Generals clamored for their bird's-eye shots of the front lines. On August 15th, 1914, the first aerial dogfight took place between Serbian pilot Miodrag Tomic and an Austro-Hungarian plane. Soon the skies became one more battleground of the war. Since it was such a new technology, the world's media and the English language itself had not worked out what to call these men and women who braved the skies. At first, they used Latin-based creations like aviator or aviatrix for women. Then they tried to get more literal, using terms like airman or birdman. They then tried more scientific terms like aeronaut or aerolist before settling on what we use today, pilot, or the less common aviator. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.